A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey, Herman and Corin. We've talked about the rental market in a number of episodes, about how I think the rental system in Israel is in a really bad state of dysfunction, and how we need much better tenant protection laws here and in general. But I'd like to chat today about the pragmatic aspects. We talked before about moving a home network for those who have more elaborate computer systems at home, like a home lab. And we took our cues there from actually the military, as we seem to often do in this podcast, because those guys have kind of drawn down the master plans for what they call network in a box and moving a network with minimal disruption from anywhere to just about anywhere. But today I'd like to broaden out the discussion a bit and chat about preparing for a stress-free move in general. Something I learned from our last move, which was only 3 years ago, unfortunately, and our current tenancy will now come to a conclusion in the summer, was that you really have to prepare for these things well in advance. And that's kind of a tricky thing because it puts you in this kind of limbo state for a while. But I mentioned that my wife and I are determined to own property, and that we hope that this might be the final move, or maybe the second to final move. But either way, I'm thinking that we want to make it as stress-free an experience as possible. So to give some context for the discussion, I'm recording this in late February 26th to be precise. And our contract ends, I'm going to say, August 7th, thereabouts. So very early August. So between now and then, we're going to have to find a new place to live. We're going to have to hire movers, and we're going to have to move. Now, I feel like people would say it's a bit OTT to be preparing for the move now, but my experience is that you actually want to do stuff earlier rather than later, because the last move was the most stressful thing. It's funny because I remember telling my wife that we never did a serious move before. Our previous place was our first home together, so we moved into it from two pretty small places, and it was the first time I used movers, because up to then I just had stuff that would fit in suitcases, and that wasn't really too big a deal. But now we had a big fridge, one of those like American style fridges. My wife has a few pieces of furniture, like bigger pieces of furniture, so it was the first kind of serious move. And I told her that I almost didn't want to be there on move day, because the thought of movers being stressed would stress me out. I definitely pick up on other people's stress, and and I was like, no, they do this every day. They're professionals. But the movers were super stressed. They were like, it was everything I envisioned, but worse. The movers were like kind of cursing us out for like how much stuff we had, and it was weird. It was like acrimonious, because we were like paying for a move where the movers were clearly unhappy with what we did, what they had to move. So that kind of sucked, and I guess probably next time we'll move a different moving company, or we'll use a different moving company. But I think part of the stress was that they couldn't get a crane so they had to use the really crappy tiny elevator in our building. So I'm not sure there's much we can do about that, but it has made me very much on a mission to just get rid of everything that I can. The other thing that I'm doing at the moment is I'm using my beloved label maker, and my rationale is that I have this home inventory system called Homebox we talked about in previous episodes, where you can basically write down where stuff is, and that for things that are going to be coming with us, if it's all properly labeled and identified, it'll be easier to slot it back together in the next place. So Herman and Corin, for those who have maybe had some moves between apartments that were kind of stressful, and we didn't have much break, but it was still massively time consuming, and we had to we did a lot of the packing ourselves, And again, we left that kind of too late. So by the time we got our boxes, because we had to, it was just the move itself cost, I'm going to say, going from the shekel to the dollar, $2,000, like super expensive, super expensive. And like that was a financial hit, or like a major financial hit, as well as the first you have to pay in Israel 1 month's rent for a realtor. So these were just successive blows that were pretty brutal. And one thing that I've thought about is maybe even, I mean, I want to donate whatever I can. I'm at the point where I hate throwing things in the bin that are good. I'll give you an example. I have a internet router that I don't need anymore, but I only purchased it a few years ago. And for things like this, sometimes if you put it up on a Facebook group saying it's free, you end up spending half your day dealing with people who want to get you to take photographs of this and that, and can it becomes a whole deal, and you just don't have time for it. So my question is, on the one hand, I want to discard of things that don't have value, and thanks to Herman's erudite episodes about what are old cables, I feel much more confident getting rid of all the stuff like Qualcomm cables now. But for the bigger stuff where you think, hey, this is a real pity, I could either potentially sell this or give this away, and my preference would usually be donating things because it's such a stress to do secondhand sales in Israel. What are some tips holistically to make the whole process as stress-free as it can be when you finally get to moving day?
Moving house is a significant event that is often both exciting and stressful. You are excited about the new space and the fresh start, but the actual process of getting your life from point A to point B is a different story. When you add the specific quirks of the Israeli rental market into the mix, it becomes a very demanding process. It is not just about packing boxes. It is about navigating a unique cultural and logistical environment that can feel as demanding as a full-time job.
Herman Poppleberry here. You are right, Corn. Moving in Israel is basically a national sport, especially in August. It is when almost every rental contract in the country seems to expire simultaneously. It is hot, everyone is stressed, and the logistics can be difficult. Today's prompt from Daniel is about exactly this. He is looking ahead to a move in August and wants to know how to make it as stress-free as possible. He is already getting ahead of the game with some great tools like a label maker and an inventory system called Homebox.
It is smart of him to start now. We are talking in late February, and he is looking at an August move. That is about 5 or 6 months of lead time. Most people wait until 30 days before the move to even start thinking about boxes. But Daniel has had some rough experiences in the past, including some issues with movers and those notoriously tiny Israeli elevators, so he is trying to take a more holistic approach this time around. He is thinking about the mental load, not just the physical labor.
I love that he mentioned Homebox. For our listeners who might not be familiar, Homebox is an amazing open source inventory management system. It is a way to keep track of every single thing you own, where it is located, and even its value or warranty information. When you are moving, it is a major advantage. Instead of just writing kitchen on a box, you can actually have a digital record of exactly which box contains the immersion blender and which one has the spare light bulbs. Since it is self-hosted, Daniel probably has it running on a small server or a Raspberry Pi, which fits his tech-heavy background perfectly.
I remember when we talked about organization back in episode 8.3. We explored the idea of the labeling plateau, which is that point where your system becomes so complex that it actually starts to hinder you instead of help you. But for a move, you almost cannot be too detailed. If Daniel is using Homebox, he can assign a unique identifier to every box. He can even print out small QR codes and stick them on the side. Imagine arriving at the new place, needing a specific charging cable, and being able to search your phone and find out it is in box number 42 in the spare bedroom. It removes that frantic digging through tape and cardboard at 2 o'clock in the morning.
That is the goal. And Daniel is also thinking about the stuff he does not want to take with him. He mentioned that he has a lot of things he wants to donate or dispose of, but he finds secondhand sales in Israel to be incredibly time-consuming. This connects back to what we discussed in episode 655 regarding the headache tax. Sometimes the amount of money you get from selling a used router or a piece of furniture on Facebook Marketplace or Yad2 just is not worth the emotional and temporal cost of dealing with people who want 50 more photos or who show up 3 hours late to pick it up.
The headache tax is a very real thing. In Israel, the second-hand market can be particularly aggressive. You list something for a fair price, and you get 20 messages asking for a 60% discount, or asking if you can deliver it to a city 2 hours away. There is a certain culture of negotiation here that can be exhausting. If Daniel is looking for a stress-free move, my first piece of advice is to be very aggressive about what he defines as valuable enough to sell. If it is worth less than, say, 200 shekels, just give it away. The peace of mind is worth more than the cash.
I agree. For those donations, there are some great options in Israel that are much easier than individual sales. There is a website called Agora, which is specifically for giving things away for free. People on there are usually much more grateful and less demanding than the buyers on Yad 2. There are also organizations like various Gamoks or local charities like WIZO or Na'amat that will often come and pick up larger items if they are in good condition. But the key is to do it now, in the spring, before the August rush. By June, everyone is trying to get rid of stuff, and the charities get overwhelmed. They actually stop taking donations sometimes because their warehouses are full.
Let us talk about the timeline. Daniel is planning for August. That is the peak of the heat and the peak of the demand for movers. One of the biggest stressors in an Israeli move is the Manof, or the crane. Like Daniel mentioned, many buildings here have elevators that are barely big enough for 2 people, let alone an American-style refrigerator or a king-size mattress. If you do not book a crane in advance, you might end up with movers who are exhausted and frustrated, trying to lug heavy furniture up 5 flights of stairs. That is how things get broken and how tempers flare.
That explains why his last move was so acrimonious. If the movers were struggling with a tiny elevator and a heavy fridge, they were probably miserable. In Israel, the Manof is often an extra cost, sometimes 400 to 600 shekels per hour, but it is the single best investment you can make for a stress-free move. It takes the heavy lifting out of the equation. You park the crane outside, they wrap the furniture, and it goes straight from the balcony or a large window down to the truck. It turns a 6-hour back-breaking job into a 2-hour professional operation. It also protects the common areas of the building, which keeps your new neighbors happy.
I think Daniel's focus on the inventory is also a great way to handle the insurance aspect. When you move in Israel, you really need to make sure your movers have proper insurance. Not just general business insurance, but bituach tevala, which is specific transit insurance. If you have a digital inventory in Homebox with photos of your items before they were packed, you have a much stronger case if something arrives damaged. It takes the he said she said out of the situation. You can show the mover a time-stamped photo of the television working perfectly on the morning of the move.
That is a vital consideration. Speaking of the movers, the service crisis we talked about in episode 655 is very relevant here. Finding reliable service providers in Israel can be a challenge. For a move, you really want to get a written quote. Never agree to a price over the phone based on a general description. A professional moving company should send someone to the apartment to see the volume of stuff, the access to the elevator, and the parking situation. If they will not do that, they are probably going to try to change the price on move day when they see how much stuff you actually have. In Hebrew, this is often called the extra boxes surprise, and it is a major source of conflict.
Daniel mentioned he is originally from Ireland, and I wonder if there is a bit of a cultural clash there too. Moving in Israel is a very loud process. It is high energy, there is a lot of negotiating, and it can feel very chaotic. For someone who values a more structured, quiet approach, it can be overwhelming. That is why the preparation he is doing now is so vital. If he can walk into that move with everything labeled, a clear plan for the movers, and the Manof already booked, he can stay in control of the environment. He is essentially creating a buffer of organization against the inevitable chaos of the day.
Let us look closer at the Homebox side of things. Since Daniel works in tech and automation, he can really leverage this. He could set up locations in Homebox that correspond to the rooms in his new apartment. As he packs a box, he assigns it to new apartment bedroom 1. This helps with the unpacking phase, which is often where the stress lingers for weeks. Most people have mystery boxes that sit in the corner of the living room for 6 months because they do not know what is inside. With a proper inventory, the mystery is gone. He can even use the CSV export feature in Homebox to create a master manifest that he keeps on his phone.
I also think there is a psychological component to the stress-free goal. Daniel mentioned his wife, Hannah, and their son, Ezra. Moving with a young child adds a whole other layer of complexity. Ezra will be just about a year old by the time they move in August. That means they need to have a survival kit that stays with them, not on the truck. Diapers, formula, favorite toys, a change of clothes for everyone, and basic snacks. If that gets buried in a box on the truck, the first 4 hours in the new apartment will be miserable. You do not want to be searching for a pacifier while the movers are asking where the sofa goes.
Definitely. The Box Zero concept is essential. It is the box you carry in your own car. It has the coffee maker, the phone chargers, the basic tools to put the crib back together, and the bed sheets for the first night. You do not want to be searching through 50 boxes at 10 o'clock at night just to find a clean set of sheets for the baby's crib. In the heat of an Israeli August, you also want to make sure that Box Zero includes a few light bulbs and maybe a basic fan, just in case the air conditioning in the new place takes a few hours to kick in.
We should also talk about sorting through the old life. Daniel is worried about the time-consuming nature of getting rid of things. One holistic tip I have seen work well is the one in, one out rule, but accelerated for a move. Every time he labels a box for the new house, he should challenge himself to fill a bag for donation or trash. If you are touching an object to pack it, you are making a conscious decision that it is worth the cost of moving it. Because moving is expensive. Daniel mentioned it cost him about $2,000 last time. If you are paying by volume or by the hour, moving a box of old cables you have not used in 5 years is literally costing you money.
That reminds me of our talk about old cables in the past. It is so easy to hoard them just in case. But in 2026, most of those old proprietary power bricks and VGA cables are truly obsolete. Daniel said he feels more confident getting rid of those now, which is great. For the bigger stuff, like that American-style fridge he mentioned, he needs to measure the doorways in the new place now. There is nothing more stressful than the movers arriving at the new apartment and realizing the fridge does not fit through the kitchen door. In some Israeli apartments, you actually have to take the doors off the fridge or even the door off the hinges of the house just to get it in.
That is where the Manof saves the day again. If it is going through the balcony, you do not have to worry about the narrow hallway or the door frame. But let us look at the financial side for a second. Daniel mentioned the cost of the realtor, which is typically 1 month's rent plus value-added tax in Israel. That is a huge hit on top of the moving costs. When you add the security deposit and the first month's rent, a move can easily cost 15 or 20,000 shekels up front. This financial pressure often trickles down into the emotional stress of the move day.
It is a massive financial burden. We talked about the Israeli mortgage system in episode 514, and while renting is different, the financial pressure is similar. One way to reduce the stress is to build a specific moving buffer in the budget. Assume there will be an extra 500 shekels for the movers because you forgot to mention the heavy wardrobe, and another few hundred for cleaning the new place before you move in. If you expect those costs, they do not feel like a crisis when they happen. Also, Daniel should check his contract regarding the Arvut Bankite or bank guarantee. Getting those funds released from the old landlord can sometimes take weeks, so he needs to account for that liquidity gap.
What about the utilities? That is another classic Israeli stressor. Changing the arnona, or municipal tax, the water bill, the electricity, and the gas into your name. In some cities, you can do this online now through the municipal websites, but in others, you still have to send faxes or go in person. Daniel should start making a list of these accounts in June. He needs to coordinate with the current tenant of the new place and the landlord to get the meter readings on the day he gets the keys. If you do not do this, you might end up paying for the previous tenant's final 2 weeks of air conditioning, which in August can be a significant amount of money.
And do not forget the internet. Since Daniel works in technology and automation, his home network is probably quite sophisticated. We have talked about his home lab before. Moving a home lab is not like moving a toaster. He needs to ensure that the fiber optic connection is ready to go at the new place on day 1. In Israel, getting a technician from Bezek or one of the fiber companies like Partner or Cellcom can take a week or 2 if you do not book it in advance. If he is working from home, he cannot afford 2 weeks of downtime. He should call the provider the moment he has a signed contract and a move-in date.
He actually mentioned in his prompt that we talked about moving a home network before, taking cues from the military network in a box concept. That is a great way to view the whole move. If he treats the move like a deployment, he will be much better off. He should have a backup plan for everything. What if the movers are late? What if the elevator breaks? What if the internet is not active? Having a mobile hotspot ready and a backup moving contact can lower the heart rate significantly.
Right, and he is already doing that with Homebox. It is essentially his logistical database. Another holistic tip is to consider the August factor specifically regarding the heat. If possible, tell the movers to start at 6 or 7 in the morning. By noon in Israel in August, the temperature is often 35 degrees Celsius or higher with intense humidity. Everyone slows down, people get cranky, and the risk of accidents goes up. If the main truck is loaded by 10 in the morning, the hardest part of the day is done before the sun is at its peak. It also means they might finish the whole job by early afternoon, giving the family time to settle in before dark.
And buy a lot of cold water for the movers. It sounds simple, but in Israel, showing a bit of mensch-like behavior goes a long way. If you have a cooler full of cold water and some snacks for the crew, they are going to take much better care of your stuff. It changes the dynamic from a cold transaction to a team effort. Daniel mentioned his last move felt acrimonious. A few bottles of cold Gatorade and some Borecas or a couple of pizzas for lunch can prevent that. It is a small investment that pays off in the way your furniture is handled.
That is so true. It is about managing the human element. The movers are people who are doing incredibly hard physical labor in a difficult climate. If they feel respected, they perform better. Another thing Daniel should look into is the Zikron Devarim, or a summary of the agreement with the moving company. It should list the date, the time, the number of workers, the price, and whether that includes the boxes and packing materials. Some companies in Israel offer a full packing service where they come the day before and do everything for you. It costs more, but if stress reduction is the goal, it is the ultimate luxury.
It really is. Imagine waking up on move day and everything is already in boxes. You just have to carry your box zero to the car and watch the professionals do their thing. For a family with a young baby and 2 working parents, that might be the best money they ever spend. It saves days of living in a house full of half-packed boxes, which is a very stressful environment for a child and for adults. It allows Daniel and Hannah to focus on Ezra instead of on bubble wrap.
Let us look at the inventory of the new house itself. Before they move a single box in, Daniel should go there and take high-resolution photos of every wall, floor, and ceiling. This is crucial for getting your security deposit back later. If there is a scratch on the floor or a mark on the wall, you want proof that it was there before you arrived. In our episode on tenant protection, we talked about how lopsided the laws can be in Israel. Your best protection is documentation. He should also check all the shutters, the triseam, and the air conditioning units to make sure they are functioning perfectly before the movers arrive.
That is a vital point, and it goes back to the Homebox system. He could even create a location for the new apartment and upload those before photos directly to it. That way, everything is in one place. He can also use that time to measure for things like curtains or shelving. If he can have some of those things ready to go, the apartment will feel like home much faster. There is a psychological comfort in having your own curtains up on the first or second day. It stops the feeling of living in a temporary camp.
One more thing on the disposal of items. Daniel mentioned he hates throwing things in the bin if they are still good. For things like that internet router he mentioned, if he does not want to sell it, he could look for local repair cafes or community centers. There is a growing movement in Israel for sustainable electronics disposal. But again, the key is the timeline. If it is July 30th and he still has a pile of maybe items, they're going to end up in the trash because he will not have time to find them a good home. He needs to set a final exit date for all donations, maybe the end of June.
That is a solid deadline. Anything that has not been picked up by June 30th goes to the big orange recycling bins or the local charity drop-off. No exceptions. It prevents that last-minute panic where you are trying to give away a sofa at midnight before the movers arrive. It also gives him July to focus purely on the logistics of what is actually moving. He can use that month to finalize the Homebox entries and make sure every box has its label.
I also want to touch on the Homebox technical setup. Since he is using it for the move, he should make sure it is backed up in the cloud or on a portable drive that stays with him. It would be a cruel irony if he moved his server, the database got corrupted during the bump in the truck, and he lost his entire inventory right when he needed it to unpack. He should probably do a full export to a portable format like a PDF or a spreadsheet that lives on his phone and Hannah's phone.
That would be a nightmare. Where are the kitchen towels? I do not know. The server is down. That is a very 2026 problem to have. But seriously, a simple export to a PDF or a spreadsheet that he keeps on his phone would be a great analog backup for a digital system. He could even print out the master list and put it in box 0. There is something very satisfying about crossing items off a physical list as they come off the truck.
So, to summarize the holistic plan for Daniel, start now in February. Use Homebox to categorize everything. Be ruthless with the headache tax on small items. Book the Manof and the movers early for August. Prepare a box 0 for the family and the baby. And most importantly, manage the move day environment with early starts and plenty of hydration for everyone involved. He should also make sure he has the physical keys in hand at least 24 hours before the movers arrive if possible.
It sounds like a lot, but by spreading it out over 6 months, it becomes a series of small, manageable tasks instead of one giant source of stress. Daniel is already ahead of 99% of people by even thinking about this in February. I think he is going to have a much better experience this time around. The fact that he is thinking about the mover's perspective and the limitations of the building shows he has learned from the past.
I hope so. Moving is never fun, but it does not have to be a trauma. It is about moving from a state of chaos to a state of order. And with the right tools and the right mindset, you can actually enjoy the transition. It is a time of renewal. He is literally evaluating every possession and only keeping what matters. That can be a very cathartic process if you do not rush it.
I agree. And it is a great opportunity to reset. Every move is a chance to look at your possessions and ask, does this serve the life I am living now, or the life I was living 5 years ago? For Daniel, with a new son and a growing family, his needs are changing. The move is a physical manifestation of that change. He is moving from the life of a couple to the life of a family with a toddler. His inventory should reflect that.
That is a beautiful way to look at it, Korn. It is not just moving boxes. It is moving into a new chapter of life. Especially if this is their final or second to final move as they look toward owning property as he mentioned. It is a big step toward stability. By mastering the logistics now, he is setting a precedent for how they handle big transitions as a family.
It really is. And we should probably mention that if he is looking into buying eventually, our episode 514 on the Israeli mortgage system, the mashkanta, is definitely worth a re-listen. It is a whole different world of stress, but one that is much easier to navigate if you know the rules of the game. The same principles of documentation and early preparation apply there too.
For sure, the mortgage system here is almost as complex as the move-in logistics, but one step at a time. First, get through the August move, then they can worry about the long-term stuff. He should also keep all his receipts from this move, as some move-in expenses can occasionally be tax deductible if the move is for work purposes, though he should check with an Israeli accountant on that.
Well, Daniel, we hope this helps. You have got a great start with Homebox and the label maker. Just keep that momentum going through the spring, and August will be here before you know it. Hopefully, this move will be the smooth, professional experience you deserve. Remember to take breaks and not let the process consume your weekends for the next 6 months. Slow and steady wins the race.
And hey, if you are listening and you have your own moving stories or tips for staying sane during a transition, we want to hear them. We love hearing how people use technology to solve these very human problems.
Yeah, and if you are finding these discussions helpful, please take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really does help the show grow and helps other people find these conversations. We appreciate all of you who have been with us through so many episodes. We are almost at episode 1000, which is a huge milestone for us.
It really makes a difference. We are coming up on some big milestones soon, and it is all thanks to this community. If you want to check out our back catalog, including those episodes we mentioned on the labeling plateau or the Israeli service crisis, head over to our website. You can search the whole archive there and find transcripts for everything.
We also want to give a quick shout out to Suno. Our show music is generated with Suno, which has been a fun part of our own tech exploration here on the podcast. It is amazing what you can create with these tools nowadays. It allows us to have a fresh sound for every episode without a massive production budget.
It really is. Well, Corn, I think we have covered the bases for today. I am feeling motivated to go organize my own junk drawer now, and I am not even moving. I might even set up a Homebox instance just to track my collection of vintage keyboards.
The power of a good organizational system is infectious, Herman. I might go label my spice rack. I've been meaning to do that since 2024.
That is the spirit. Better late than never. All right, thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. I am Herman Poppleberry.
And I am Corn. We will see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the close from sloth